The beam of light struck so fast that Jensen barely had time to toss his wrench aside and duck. One moment he was crouched beneath the open hood of a derelict rover in the Martian outpost's hangar, and the next he was weightless, stomach lurching, air sucked from his lungs. The wrench clattered to the floor and echoed once, then silence, then darkness. When he came to, the floor wasn't metal anymore. It was something smooth and warm, like polished stone, and it vibrated slightly, as though humming with life. Overhead was a ceiling too high to see clearly, lit by a soft golden glow without a discernible source. Isaac blinked the blur from his eyes. Biological respiration stable, musculoskeletal integrity 87%, consciousness confirmed. He turned his head toward the sound. A tall, sinewy creature stood at the foot of the slab he was lying on. Its skin shimmered like oil on water, and its long limbs moved with a fluidity that made Isaac's stomach churn again. "What? Where am I?" The creature tilted its head, as if inspecting a broken appliance. Human specimen fully functional, proceeding with behavioral observation. A second creature stepped forward, this one shorter, wearing something like a robe made of translucent strands. It gestured toward the slab. "Rise, subject." Isaac sat up slowly. His ribs ached and his head throbbed. "Subject, observation. Look, I don't know what kind of experiment you're running, but I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. That's it." The first alien turned to the second. "Initiate tool demonstration. Let us assess primitive functionality." A low table extended from the wall, and on it lay a sad collection of junk, what looked like a cracked circuit board, a bent metal rod, some kind of alien battery half the size of a football, a handful of wires, and a translucent plastic casing. Isaac frowned. "These are tools." The second alien made a sound like gravel washing down a drain. "These are the remains of equipment found on your colony's waste site. You will construct a communication device capable of interstellar frequencies." Isaac blinked. "With this?" "That's not even half of this stuff is fried. You will attempt. We are curious to witness the creative limitations of your species." Isaac stood, swaying slightly as pain shot through one knee. He'd twisted it during the abduction, maybe, or maybe during that fall last week in the rover bay. He limped toward the table and examined the parts more closely. The circuit board was Martian issue, all right, probably from an old terraforming drone. The wires were copper, frayed but usable. The battery was alien, but he recognized the energy port style from something he'd seen during a trade analysis briefing. The plastic casing was some kind of housing unit, not originally meant for electronics. "All right, you want a radio. Let's see how far we get." For the next several hours he worked. The aliens gathered silently around him at a distance, occasionally murmuring among themselves in a language that sounded like wind moving through hollow tubes. Isaac ignored them. He felt the familiar calm set in, the one that always came with troubleshooting. He stripped the wires, tested connections, and used the bent rod to create a makeshift soldering tip, heating it on a nearby wall panel that radiated low heat. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. He cracked the circuit board, rerouting damaged pathways with jumper wires. The alien battery was the wild card. It ran too hot. Output was unstable, but he built a regulator from copper loops in the plastic housing. As he worked, he muttered to himself, "This is stupid. This is insane. Who makes someone build a radio from garbage just to prove a point?" The short alien leaned closer. "Are you angry?" Isaac looked up. "No, I'm focused. Big difference. Humans display strong emotional energy during mechanical activity. Fascinating." Isaac didn't respond. He was too busy trying not to cross two live wires and fry the whole thing. Eventually, after what felt like a full Martian day, he had something that vaguely resembled a handheld transmitter. It wasn't pretty, and it hummed in a way that made his teeth ache, but it powered on. He pressed the makeshift button. A shrill burst of static echoed in the chamber. The tall alien stepped forward. "Impossible." Isaac wiped sweat from his brow. "Not impossible, just inconvenient. Your species lacks the biological intelligence for this level of improvisation." Isaac snorted. "Yeah, tell that to every mechanic who kept a lunar rover running with duct tape and prayer." The alien took the device from him with long fingers and turned it over. You created a frequency modulation device using parts not designed for communication. Isaac stretched his back, wincing. Well, yeah. I mean, it won't reach Earth, but I could probably bounce a signal to one of Mars' orbiting satellites if I tuned it right. The tall alien's eyes pulsed faintly. We have misjudged your species' technological limitations. The short one added, we assumed tool use was limited to rudimentary repair and physical manipulation. You demonstrate adaptive synthesis. Isaac sat back down on the slab. I demonstrate being sick of people underestimating me. A long silence followed. Then, without warning, the slab beneath him lifted and began to move, gliding along a narrow corridor. Lights shifted above his head as he passed under them, and the air grew cooler the farther he went. He was brought to a circular chamber where a larger alien, wider and more rigid in posture, awaited. This one had deep ridges along its arms and a long metallic sash across its chest. A rank, maybe. You constructed a communication device using obsolete components and alien technology. Isaac nodded. Yeah, what of it? You will build another. This one must be capable of remote signal encryption. Isaac rubbed his eyes. You realize that takes more than copper wire and scraps, right? We will provide what you require. For the next 3 days, Isaac was given better parts, not great but functional. He requested a voltmeter, something they substituted with a floating orb that changed color based on electrical flow. He needed a breadboard, and they gave him a sheet of something that adjusted its shape to fit components. Every need was met with a strange, alien equivalent, and Isaac began to learn their functions by trial and error. He didn't sleep much, and he ate only when a tray was pushed in through a wall slot. The food was gelatinous and flavorless, but it kept him going. His hands were blistered, his knee swollen, but he kept working. On the 5th day, he succeeded. The new device was small, sleek, and capable of broadcasting to frequencies he didn't even recognize. It encrypted signals using a modulation he had guessed at, based on patterns he'd seen in the alien language. He handed it to the tall alien, who took it silently and turned it on. A smooth pulse emanated from the device, and a light on the wall flickered in response. It is functional. Isaac leaned against the wall, exhausted. Told you, the larger, ridged alien entered again. You will be returned to your colony. Your tools are primitive, but your methods are not. Isaac gave a weak laugh. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me in a while. You have altered our understanding of human capabilities. We believed your species relied strictly on pre-manufactured systems. Yeah, well, Isaac said, limping toward the exit they pointed him to. Sometimes the only tool you've got is your brain. He was escorted back to a chamber filled with flickering light. As he stood in its center, he looked back at the aliens watching him. Next time you abduct a mechanic, he said, at least give him a decent soldering iron. The world spun, twisted, and then he was back in the hangar, sprawled next to the derelict rover. His wrench still lay on the floor. Isaac groaned and rolled onto his back. A voice crackled through the outpost's comms. Isaac, you disappeared off the scanners for 5 days. What happened? He looked at the ceiling, laughed once, then reached for his comm. Long story. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. The Martian dust hadn't settled yet when the outpost's airlock wheezed open and Isaac stumbled inside, covered in grime, eyes bloodshot, and limping worse than when he'd left. The artificial gravity felt heavier than he remembered, like Mars had grown resentful of his absence. Before he could take 3 steps, a long mechanical arm swung out from the wall and jabbed him with a sterile scanner. Vital signs anomalous, the outpost's medbot chirped. Dehydration. Caloric deficit, joint inflammation, foreign protein residue. Isaac batted the scanner away. Yeah, well, try building a signal array on 5 hours of sleep and mystery jelly. The medbot blinked a blue light in what he imagined was robotic disapproval. You require immediate rehydration and diagnostic imaging. He collapsed onto the nearest bench, letting the sweat dry on his skin in sticky layers. I require a nap and a sandwich the size of my forearm. Unacceptable. Scanning for internal trauma. A second probe extended with a low whir, and he didn't resist. The The dull pressure behind his right eye had been getting worse since yesterday, or whatever passed for yesterday now. Time was a guess at best in a windowless alien lab. He closed his eyes while the medbot pinged and clicked. "You have hairline fractures in your fibula and 2 metacarpals," it said. "Adrenal output suggests prolonged stress exposure. You also appear to have residual electromagnetic interference in your cranial cavity." Isaac cracked one eye open. Could that last one be from alien mind games or just the 6 cups of synthetic coffee I drank last week? Unknown. With a hiss, the medbot injected a muscle relaxant into his neck before he could object. His limbs sagged instantly. "Hey, I still need to. You will rest." Ambulation is suspended. A padded harness sealed him to the bench with gentle but unyielding force. He groaned, watching the ceiling rotate slowly as the world tilted sideways. An hour passed before the lights dimmed and the lockdown ended. Isaac pushed himself up, joints aching, and staggered toward the comms room. He keyed into the terminal with a trembling hand, hoping the system still recognized his ID. It did, but barely. A warning in red blinked at the top of the screen. "Unregistered absence, 127 hours. Great," he muttered. "I'll never hear the end of that." From a shadowed corner of the room, someone cleared their throat. Isaac turned to find Commander Rahel standing beside the viewport, arms folded, her expression unreadable. "You're lucky we didn't launch a drone to collect your corpse," she said. "I got abducted," he replied. "That usually makes clocking in a little tricky." She raised an eyebrow. "By whom? No idea. They didn't exactly offer business cards." He rubbed his temple. "Tall, shimmery, big on tests. Think they were studying improvisation or something. You expect me to file a report saying you were kidnapped by science nerds with a superiority complex. I expect you to believe me when I say they weren't hostile. Just confused." Confused about what? He paused, then pulled the alien device from his belt. It was no longer transmitting, but its sleek surface still hummed faintly. He set it on the desk. They wanted to see what a human could do with garbage. "I gave them a reason to worry." Rahel approached it cautiously. "Is this functional?" Was fried the insulators on the return trip, but it worked up there, transmitted, encrypted. She picked it up and turned it over. "This casing isn't anything we've seen." "Nope, neither's the battery. Or the frequency modulation. Or the self-correcting signal dampener I hacked together using a meat thermometer and a phase coil." Her eyes narrowed. "You had a meat thermometer? Long story, don't ask." She set the device down with care. "You realize if this is what you say it is, we just leapfrogged 5 years of research." Isaac shrugged, then winced. "I also ruptured a tendon in my knee and might be allergic to alien protein paste, so it evens out. You need to debrief. I need a working knee and a normal sandwich. Later." They moved to the briefing room, a narrow space with a single table and an aging projector embedded into the ceiling. Isaac slumped into a chair while Rahel activated a recorder. She didn't speak again until the light turned red. Described the environment. "Warm, no seams in the walls. Everything looked grown, not built. They didn't use chairs, just platforms that moved with you. Like gravity had options." Described the beings. "Tall, limbs like vines, spoke in pulses, but they had translators, didn't blink. I think they used light changes in their skin to communicate among themselves." "Did they harm you?" "Only emotionally. They kept looking at me like I was a monkey using a rock to open a coconut." "Did they attempt to extract information?" "They didn't ask questions. They gave me parts, broken stuff, wanted me to build tech I didn't have schematics for." "And you succeeded?" "Twice. Once with junk, once with better junk." Rahel leaned forward. "Did you get the impression they were testing your intelligence?" "No, my creativity. They wanted to know what I'd do with the wrong tools." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because they didn't think humans could adapt without instructions." "Did they say that?" "No, but they watched like they expected me to fail." She tapped her fingers against the table. "Could they be preparing for contact?" "Maybe. Or maybe they're trying to figure out if we're dangerous when cornered." The room went quiet except for the soft hum of the air recyclers. Outside, the Martian wind kicked up a thin wail against the metal walls. Finally, Rahel stood. "This stays between us for now. If Command hears about this through the wrong channels, they'll panic." "Noted." You're off duty until your scans come back clean, no exceptions. Even for light sabotage, she didn't laugh, just walked out. Isaac stayed seated, staring at the device on the table. After a minute, he opened a storage drawer, pulled out a small toolkit, and began removing the casing. 2 hours later, surrounded by wires and low-voltage testers, he'd isolated 3 components he didn't recognize. The rest, while alien in design, followed logical circuits. But these 3 sat in the board like they didn't belong, no visible connections, no ports, yet they hummed faintly whenever he touched them. He ran a current through the board. The hum intensified, then stopped. The lights in the room flickered. "Okay," he muttered, "that's new." He ran a second current, same reaction. He disconnected the board entirely. The light stayed steady, then he touched one of the mystery components directly. A sharp pulse ran up his fingers and the overhead panel buzzed. He yanked his hand back. "All right." "You're not resistors." He reached for a magnifier and leaned in, squinting. The surface of the component writhed like it was made of compressed foam, shifting under the lens. No solder points, no circuitry, just motion. A soft knock on the glass broke his focus. He turned toward the window. A technician stood outside, wide-eyed. "Your lab just caused a 10-second blackout in hydroponics," she said. Isaac stared at the board. "It wasn't me, it was the coconut," she blinked. "What? Never mind." He picked up a pair of anti-static gloves and slid them on slowly. "Let's see what else you've got. Mystery brick." The component squirmed gently under the magnifier like it was breathing. Isaac leaned closer, adjusting the lens until he could see the texture of its surface, fine ridges, too symmetrical to be random, curling into nested patterns that shifted subtly when touched. It didn't heat up, didn't spark, didn't short. It just reacted. He pulled his hands back and sat still for a moment, watching it in silence. No movement. A soft ping from the lab door made him glance up. The outpost's head technician, Lion, entered with her sleeves rolled to the elbow and a portable spectrometer slung over one shoulder. She looked like she hadn't blinked in an hour. "Security flagged your bench," she said, setting the spectrometer down. Diagnostics picked up a localized magnetic shift correlated with lights dimming across 4 sectors. "I was careful," Isaac said. "Didn't even connect it to the mains." "You had a power surge without a power source," she replied. "That's not careful, that's sorcery." He gestured toward the component. "I think this thing piggybacks on ambient fields. Might be drawing energy through induction, but I still haven't found a consistent pattern." Lion narrowed her eyes and leaned in. "Have you run a zero-field test?" Faraday box didn't block it, still pulsed. She looked at him, then at the component again. "You're telling me this thing operates without direct power, no wiring, and it reacts to human contact. I'm telling you it doesn't make any damn sense." "Perfect. I'll file that under technical miracle and wait for it to start talking." Isaac picked up a ceramic probe and nudged the component slightly. "I don't think it's active. I think it responds, like a trigger maybe, for what? No idea. But when I ran a current through the board, it gave off a pulse that knocked out the hydroponics lights." Lion exhaled through her nose. "All right, let's try something stupid." She reached into her tool pouch and pulled out a micro-induction loop, then affixed it to the workbench. "We'll isolate its response under a modulated field. If it reacts, we map the signature." He nodded and stepped back. Lion powered up the loop and adjusted the frequency. A soft hum filled the room. The component twitched. "Did you see that?" she said. "Yeah." "Do it again." She increased the amplitude. This time the component lifted slightly, hovered less than a millimeter off the bench, and spun once. They both froze. Lion's voice dropped. "That's not behavior, that's intent." Isaac rubbed his face. "I don't think it's a component. I think it's a packaged function like a program in physical form. Hardware that runs itself? Maybe it's not hardware at all. Maybe it's condensed logic." She gave him a look. "You've been awake too long." He turned to the drawer and grabbed a pair of tweezers. "If it responds to field modulation, what happens if we give it a pattern?" Lion stepped back. "I'm not standing near it if you're throwing Morse at an alien rock, not Morse." Isaac adjusted the loop to a sweeping frequency sine wave, oscillating slowly, something organic. "A pattern it might recognize." The component pulsed, once, then again. Then a third time, slightly faster, Lion stared at it. It's sinking. He killed the field. The component dropped. Okay, he said carefully, that's enough for today. But Lion didn't move. She was staring at something behind him. Isaac. He turned. The lights above the bench blinked once. Then the lab's wall-mounted console flared to life, displaying a line of text in blocky alien glyphs. It translated a moment later. Replication unnecessary. Function demonstrated. Lion backed toward the door. I didn't input anything. Isaac moved to the console. Neither did I. The display changed again. Adaptive threshold exceeded. Observation complete. He reached for the power switch, but the console shut itself down before he touched it. Then silence. Lion's voice was quiet. Was that a transmission? No, the console isn't networked. So what the hell just spoke to us? He looked at the component, now inert on the bench. I think. It was listening, and now it's done. They stood still for a long minute. Then Lion said, We're burning this room to the ground, right? Isaac shook his head. No, we're documenting what happened and isolating every component. If this thing transmits on its own, we need to know how. That evening, after securing the lab under Level 4 containment protocols, Isaac submitted a full technical report: diagrams, field responses, signal patterns, and a time-stamped breakdown of the incident. He didn't bother trying to explain the behavior. He just recorded what they saw. The outpost's AI reviewed the footage. It flagged two anomalies: the component's magnetic levitation and the console's unscheduled activation. Both were labeled non-reproducible under current parameters. Isaac spent the next 2 days under medical supervision. A full neural scan showed slight irregularities in his occipital lobe, likely from prolonged exposure to the component's emissions. His sleep patterns were disrupted, and his cortisol levels were twice the norm. The medical officer prescribed rest, hydration, and limited screen time. He ignored the last one and spent the nights reviewing his own footage, frame by frame. On the third day, the component stopped responding altogether. It no longer pulsed, no longer reacted to field changes. It had gone silent. Lion ran a full material scan. It showed no moving parts, no circuitry, no power source. Just a dense lattice of unknown material, resistant to heat, radiation, and pressure. Isaac stood over it in the containment chamber. You think it's dead? Lion studied her tablet, or it finished what it came to do. He nodded slowly, then sealed the chamber. Later that week, Commander Rahul called them both into her office. She looked more tired than usual. We've received a transmission, she said. Not from Earth. Isaac frowned. Origin? Unknown. It came through a peripheral relay on the dark side of Phobos. Encoded with a modulation similar to what you reported from the device. Lion folded her arms. Content? Rahul tapped a button. A simple message appeared on the screen. Human cognitive boundaries, revised, no further demonstration required. Isaac exhaled. So that was the test. They weren't mocking us, Lion said. They were calibrating their assumptions. Rahul locked eyes with Isaac. You just convinced someone out there that we're not bound by our tools. He leaned back in the chair. Then maybe next time they'll ask instead of abducting someone. Maybe, Rahul said. But at least now they know who they're dealing with. The screen dimmed. The room felt warmer than before. Isaac stood and stretched. His legs still ached, but it was healing. He turned to Lion. You still think we should have burned the lab? She picked up her tablet. Absolutely. But I'm glad we didn't. He laughed once, then headed for the exit. Outside, the Martian sky was a deep rust red, and the air inside the dome tasted faintly of ozone. He walked back toward the hangar, where the rover still sat waiting for repair. This time, he brought a proper soldering iron.